He knows it. There's a hospital in about 2 months. I think put in the front. Oh, your family was able to do that. It's stranger from that.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call our September 14th, 2020 meeting of Pickens County Council to order. I want to thank everybody so much for taking the time to be here. I'm very excited about today because of some of the things that we're going to be able to talk about and do. And you could choose to be anywhere in the world and you choose to be here, so thank you for that. I'd like to turn it first to Councilman Hudson for our invocation.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight, Father, to conduct the business of the county. Lord, give us wisdom, make wise decisions in everything we do and say. Lord, I pray that you bless our country, bless our local cities, county, and our nation. We're going through a lot of bad things right now. I just pray that you'd have your hand on the United States of America. And I pray this prayer in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. If you'll remain standing, I'd like to turn it over to Sergeant Scott Patrick Rice from the U.S. Marine Corps to lead us in our pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sergeant Rice, if you will, I'd like you may be seated. We'd like to ask you to come up this way, and then I'm gonna walk down here, and we're all gonna give a head nod to you rather than shake your hand, if you don't mind. But I'm gonna come over this way. This is something that I'm very excited about, and you that we're doing. We're so thankful for our Veterans Office to be able to help us to accomplish this, and each month we're going to be able to honor someone like you who made a conscious choice to serve. So Sergeant Scott Patrick Rice entered the United States Marine Corps on January 27, 1992. After many weeks of rigorous training at the School of Infantry in Camp Pendleton, California, Private Rice graduated in Marine combat training. Further training taught Rice how to be a body repair mechanic on military vehicles. While in Okinawa, Rice also became a water safety survival instructor to his peers. Sergeant Rice was a born leader and loved serving his country in the United States Marine Corps. Sergeant Rice received several letters of appreciation and a certificate of commendation. He received the National Defense Service Medal, Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, Good Conduct Medal, and an Expert Rifle Badge, third award. Sergeant Rice was certified with the American Red Cross and CPR and Community First Aid and Safety. He also received several certifications on many of the military vehicles. Veteran Scott Patrick Rice served his country honorably, and today we show him our appreciation. Thank you for your service. And there's a plaque that commemorates that. We'll shake your hand virtually. Thank you. Let me stand back here and get a picture with everybody around him. Thank you. Thank you, Sergeant Rice. We'll move on to our second item, which is public forum. At this time, this is actually the public's opportunity to give feedback to the council on issues that you deem important. Madam Clerk, please call our first speaker.
Mr. Chairman and members of council, I call William Owens. William Owens. Mr. Chairman and members of council, this concludes the public.
Thank you. Item number 3 is our approval of minutes. I'll ask for a motion approving the minutes for the August 10th, 2020 council meeting, the August 24th special called meeting, and the August 24th, 2020 work section. Motion by Councilman Hudson. Second by Councilman Feemster. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. Item number 4, Administrator's Report. This time the chair recognizes Administrator Roper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Tonight with our Administrator's Report, I have several items I'd like to update you on. Of course, the first one we'll start as we have now for many months with COVID stats, updating on how things are going in Pickens County and then South Carolina as a whole. You'll see there, based on the graphic you've got in front of you, the 388 active cases that are cases that have been reported positive in the last 14 days. That number has grown somewhat, and I'll show you this on a graph in just a moment. That has grown somewhat in the last couple of weeks, where we're getting new positives faster than we're having them age off 14 days old. Up to date from March 20th, when we had our first positive, until now, there have been 39 deaths in Pickens County due to COVID-19, pretty much spread throughout the county. All of us probably know someone who's been one of those 39, and so we continue to keep those 39 communities, churches, families in our thoughts and our prayers as they deal very personally with COVID-19. Total, there's been a total of 2,617 cases in COVID-19 since March 20th here in Pickens County. South Carolina wide, there's 10,624 active cases spread throughout the state. Every county has an active case right now. The total number of confirmed deaths is just under 3,000 in Pickens County. If you look at the graph, which is the next, the red line represents the total number of cases. So you're looking at the slope. The slope is the important thing there. The steeper the slope, the more cases we are having positive tests from. You'll see that the slope relaxed at one point late summer, but now with the university, the schools, people starting to get back together, it's gone up again. The slope has gotten more steep. You can see that also with the blue data. The blue data line represents the active cases. We peaked at a little over 500 right after around July the 4th, and we started seeing a decrease through the rest of the summer. And then you'll now see that there's been an uptick. We're continuing to follow it, continuing to try to keep our staff safe with the things that we can do, and then also just encourage the public to wear masks, to practice good hand hygiene, to stay home when they can. The things we've heard over and over and over again. But we recognize, particularly now that the school children are back and the teachers are back, that we need to renew our vigilance. And so that's the point of this update here tonight. Moving to the next issue that I'd like to update you on. You'll remember back when you did your goals for 2020, and we're now a good 2/3 of the way through the year. Goal number 3 was to plan for capital expenditures. As I discussed with you last month, we are working on a capital improvement plan. We've had staff come through and recommend capital items that they would like to see us acquire for the good of the public over the next 5 years. I actually have the rough draft of that now with my notes on it. The county staff is going through this together, making sure vehicle maintenance concurs for the emergency vehicles, that the Emergency Services Board will see this document. We're going to send this through several different small groups in staff and also that council-appointed committee. And I know the chairman has called a meeting on October the 26th at 6 p.m. where we're going to present to you our draft capital improvement plan for your discussion, debate, hopefully approval. Again, the goal here, gentlemen, is that we would get to the point where we discuss, debate, analyze capital in the fall, and we look at just operations in the spring. That's where I would like for us to head. And so I think that fits with your goal when you had your planning meeting. So we're working diligently towards that. I just wanted to update you that the staff has now turned in everything on time, and it's up to us to develop a recommendation for you all to consider, because it's going to be important as we analyze our capital needs. One of the things you'll see tonight when the auditor comes up, and we, back on the capital plan for just a moment, when the auditor comes up, tonight's the night we annually set the millage. And the millage is not increasing this year, it's staying the same as last year. The auditor will speak to that. But one thing that's happening is we're starting to peel off and make it a distinctive line item as a part of the millage that 1.3 mils is dedicated to capital. That's not sufficient. That's the rest of that will come out of funds from the sale of capital asset. But we're going to continue to grow, we hope, that portion of the millage to make that a dedicated capital millage. We feel like that'll give staff better guidance. It'll give you better ability to analyze and make decisions on a year-to-year basis. So look for that, and you'll see that in the auditor's presentation here shortly. Moving on to fire fees. At the committee meeting the other night, you all recommended first reading. That first reading in title only will happen tonight, provided that you have the appropriate votes to advance it. But one thing you spoke clearly on is that you were not willing to go forward in this conversation unless the staff was able to arrange sufficient public discussion to warrant such a change. You said you wanted our fire chiefs involved, our staff involved, getting information out to people. So I want to give you a couple of ideas of what we're going to do. Now, to begin with, after the Emergency Services Board meets and discuss capital requests, their next meeting, their October meeting, will be to discuss the fire fee recommendations, to see how they feel about it so you can get the input from that board. We're going to do that. We're also going to have 3 public meetings we're planning now. Those will be in early October, early to mid-October. Listen for that date to come out. We're going to make sure we've got our facilities ready. But the way we're going to approach that is we're going to have the fire chiefs from the different parts of the county. We'll have a Dacusville-Easley meeting that'll be based in a station close to that community. We'll have a Liberty, Pickens, North, Pumpkin Town, Rocky Bottom meeting that'll be based in one of the Pickens facilities. And then we're going to have a Central 6 Mile meeting that'll be based in one of their facilities. So we're going to have those 3 open meetings where the public can come and talk to their fire chief, to myself, to Director Gibson about what exactly is being proposed or what exactly they think should be proposed as we build that out. We're also, we finalized an online survey, which we'll put out to try to see if we can get public input. We're going to have a written survey available here in the county administration building so that people can give their input. I'm going to communicate with the newspapers some of the information about what you all are considering, and we'll, of course, use social media. Director Gibson has also filmed a couple of weeks back an informational video to help people, and we're going to put this up, to help people understand what fire fees are. What are they? What are they for? Where are they on your tax bill? That sort of thing. So we're going to try to communicate with the public there. But one thing that we're doing a little different that we hope is going to be something that we will continue doing with other issues. You all probably know this room. Years ago, it was the mobile home office. It's been the tourism office. It's been the emergency services, the emergency management office from time to time. It ends up being, just because of where it's located in the building, the reception desk for the county admin building, because it just, that's where it fits into the flow. We've called it the free room just because it's free right now. We don't have anything we're doing with it. So I give credit to our public works director for coming up there with this name. Free stands for research, education, and enrichment. We're going to use this room again and again and again to help educate the public, to give them a place to come in and see all the data we're looking at. If you want to see the ordinance, come look at the ordinance. If you want to see the maps, come in and look at the maps. We've started building that out, and that room is going to be active and open to the public starting next Monday. You'll be able to come look at the maps, come look at the fees for the different districts, come look at a couple of examples we've picked that show just how there's inadequacies in the system. We're also going to show you what that fire equipment, that turnout gear and everything, what that sort of stuff costs. We're going to give the public some ideas about what things cost. We're hoping to have Director Gibson's video in there and make it a place where people can come by. Director Gibson's committed to me that he's going to keep office hours in there if people want to come by and discuss this with him. So we're looking at this as an entirely new way of communicating with the public when you all are considering something. Rather than just having your 3 readings, your public hearing, we want this to be an interactive process. We're going to try to educate the public as we go through it. So look for that. It all should be live as of next Monday when you all are back for the Committee of the Whole meeting. The next update I'll give you is what I've been doing so far every step this quarter. You passed the budget in June, but at that time, Council said with the uncertainties that we were facing in COVID, you wanted us to watch how our revenues were working, watch what we learned from Columbia, and to be strategic and targeted with what capital purchases we made. We also delayed implementation of the 3% cost of living raise that we gave to county employees. So we've continued to watch those numbers, and I'm updating you again on those tonight. First, we'll start with Mile Creek Park, which, as you can see, continues to recognize kind of record use with the things that we've added, the cabins, the docks. The revenue at Mile Creek Park, you can see, is now up over $500,000, when last year, total 2019, was under $300,000, a 74% increase in revenue at Mile Creek Park. Then on camping revenue, specifically to camping, you can see that we went from $244,000 to $442,000, 81% increase. One of the things that we think has come out of COVID is that people are not purchasing day passes. Now, that part of that is because we're not manning the gate as frequently, and that's something we're going to look at this off season to make sure that we're adequately manning the gate to get that revenue coming in. And then the season passes have not sold well this year, which we weren't really surprised, but that's a minor part of revenue. But overall, you can see that Mile Creek Park is really exceeding anything we had anticipated and continues to do well. I think that is due in large part to the great investment the county and Duke Energy has made in that facility, which we're very proud of. The next one I would ask you to look at is the Register of Deeds. So far, through August 2020, this calendar year, thus to date, we've had almost 2,000 documents processed with a revenue of a little over $345,000. Compare that to last year, 1,700 documents with a revenue of $244,000. I apologize. So you can see that as of right now, more documents are being recorded, which means more land transactions, more bank transactions, more deeds. Real estate is doing well in Pickens County, and that number represents that reality. If you look at the next one is community development. This one's hard to read, but basically what this is showing you is that our people pulling permits the last couple of months has not fallen off. We are still having building permits, power hookup permits, those sorts of things have not fallen off and continued to increase. Chris Brink, the community development director, emailed me right before quitting time today to tell me that they were a 5% increase over last year at this time. So they continue to see good, healthy development here in Pickens County. And then this one I would show you, which is something we've flirted with in the past through the leadership of Carlos Salinas and the investments you all, council, have made in our airport. And let me just pause to say, the airport has done the best job of incorporating our marketing information. That is a cool looking badge right there. You'll see it's got the plane silhouetted in it in the compliant colors, and then LQK, which people know GSP, people know those call letters. LQK is the Pickens County Airport. Don't know how we got LQK, but that's our letters. Anyway, I really like the way that they have used the marketing information there. Director Salinas tells me he can sell anything we can get him with that badge on it because he thinks it looks good as well. But regardless, this year to date, and I can't see from where I am the numbers, but basically, oh yeah, thank you. If you roll back up, you'll see our total operating revenue, a little over $553,000 so far. And then the cost of, this is the total for fiscal year 2020, so these are final numbers as of June 30th. Cost of goods sold, $249,000, almost $250,000. That's the fuel, a lot of that's fuel. And so our net profit is a little over $300,000, but then when you back out all the operating expenses, the salary, the benefits, the repairs, the utilities, non-capital purchases, insurance, all of those things, taken in together, our operating income is $2,699. In other words, gentlemen, last year, our airport, that beautiful airport that's a driver for economic development, that is a great facility for people visiting us, a good first impression no matter who comes in. Last year it made money. I'm not including in that any of the grants that they got from the FAA, millions of dollars in grants from the FAA to continue to upgrade it. It's a good news story that we need to tell more about, and it's a testament to the leadership of the airport, the Director Salinas, and the investment you all have made. So we're very proud of that, and I wanted to make sure to point that out, that our airport with the huge public benefit, a number we probably can't quantify. Nevertheless, it made money this past year. So we're proud of that. All of those things being said, gentlemen, I've spent some time with the county finance director going over this. We have now delayed a lion's share of our capital purchases for the full first quarter of this fiscal year. We've also delayed implementation of the much needed cost of living. It's my intention to activate those things as much as I can, the salary increase, the capital purchases we can make, starting in the second quarter. But through what you had told me all before, when the budget passed back in June, I wanted to make sure that there weren't any major concerns with that, so I'm giving you that update at this time. Feel free, obviously, to give me feedback. Those are all budgeted, but we were wanting to watch that carefully before we implement it.
Most of our revenue is going to be coming in January, in the early part of the year. I mean, it's great to see Mile Park doing well, and the airport making a profit is a substantial big deal.
Right.
That used to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and it
Right.
became more of a service as opposed to something. So that's excellent. But I'm very cautious as we go forward because the economy has been hit so hard as to what those revenues are going to start looking like.
And I'll tell you,
that's one of my concerns was moving ahead now to start implementing some of this stuff, because if those revenues were probably 80-90% of our revenue is going to be coming in right then.
it's less than that, but there's something else we haven't discussed that's a bit of good news, and that is the news we're getting from Columbia as they're looking at the local government fund. All the municipalities and the counties were thinking, will COVID be a reason the local government fund, the hard-earned compromise that fully funded the local government fund, will that be on the chopping block? And the news that we're getting out of Columbia through the House committee that's hearing that is no, it's not. They're recommending a full funding of that. So that's been causing, amongst the administrators and the finance directors, that's been causing a certain amount of comfort. The other point, which you raised correctly, is that the property tax collections are going to be a huge share. We haven't seen any signs that there's going to be any problems with that. We haven't seen any indications through just the delinquency process that we're going to have any problems with that. Delinquencies seem to be like they are in most years. In addition, we anticipate that all of this building that we're seeing, which we can demonstrate, will put more dollars in. And so your concern is warranted, and the finance director and I have been debating this out and back for a good couple of months. But we feel comfortable, and I told him I was going to put his word behind that as well tonight to you all, that it's time for us to move forward.
Well, I don't feel comfortable with anything coming out of Columbia. I'll make that as a public statement. We've been lied to multiple times on that, and it would not surprise me that they would cut all that funding, no matter what they say now. And I don't know how y'all feel. I'm just very cautiously, and if you have projects that you know you can do, but I would say don't push this thing full forward yet until we get a better feel. I don't want to put us in a bind.
All right. Well, what I would say is,
obviously that's your all's input
what
would be.
other comments do you guys have?
Right.
Thoughts?
The raise, increase, I think we need to go ahead with it, and for this reason, we have enough problems keeping good employees. This is something I think that we need to do, because we have had problems keeping employees and recruiting, and no matter what happens, we've got to keep the people we have. So I would be in favor of going ahead with that.
I could offer, gentlemen, to come back with capital purchases over the next few months to let you look at those in the nature of the same update I'm giving you here, if that would give you a bigger comfort level with those big ticket items.
Well, because you're talking about something completely different than
Yeah. But
capital,
The
I mean-
capital, you can kind of phase that in.
I think Councilman Whitehurst makes a huge point. I believe everything you've shared with us is a litmus test. You won't really know for sure what, because the bulk of our finances, we've always said, come in towards the first of the year. But everything you've shared is a great litmus test. But I agree with Councilman Hudson. There are some things that we necessarily can't wait on. And there's some things that we probably could push up a little bit.
All right.
I wouldn't be for just getting it all done before the end of the year.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that feedback. We will take that into account and act accordingly.
So are we gonna get some direction?
Well, that's, right now you don't really have any direction other than you've got,
I'm certainly getting some head nods.
yeah, I mean,
I think bringing us back, like you just mentioned, an idea of kind of a breakdown of what you're looking at.
Okay.
That way we can get a kind of a grasp on what numbers we're talking about.
All right.
see, I'm going to agree with Councilman Hudson. I do believe we've got to pay the people who work here more. I think that, I would love to see what are we talking about as far as numbers, as far as doing the increase that way. I'm not as concerned about the capital part that could phase in over time based on what's going on. But my opinion is take care of our people now. So you are going to come back at the next council meeting?
What I would do and what I would say is that, certainly, gentlemen, you six are the voices that matter on this issue. But the budget is balanced and the budget provides for these items. But we do need to be cautious. I hear that from you. So I will bring back particularly the capital issues, I'll bring those back for an update in the coming months, just so that we'll say, this is my intention with the next fire truck. This is my intention with the next patrol cars, those sorts of things. I think that's appropriate and certainly glad to do it.
And I do believe, if you look back years past, there have been some capital items that rocked on until June.
That's right.
And I don't feel the urgency to buy certain capital items that in past years have been able to rock on till June. Does that make sense?
It does to me, yes.
Now, do we need to hold a formal vote?
I don't want to interject myself into a legal issue here, but you've had the formal vote. That's the budget. Y'all are just looking at me to come back and give you comfort level as we move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I would ask in conclusion, and obviously give you the opportunity to ask any questions, but in conclusion, I'd like to ask you to add to tonight's agenda 2 updates. One is an economic development proposed contractual matter that I would like to, myself and Mr. Farley, update you on, and the other is an update on Project Jericho. So if you could please add those. No action. We'll just be looking to give you an update tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roper.
Mr. Roper, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
during the administrative report, we discussed at our last CAL about recycle center hours, and we said that we'd ask an administrative report on the 14th where we stand on that.
We have, and I hate to steal the thunder of our public works director,
If I need to
and our
wait,
public works crew that are here, but I will tell you this: we very quietly, to make sure that we were prepared and that we shook out any issues, we very quietly last Tuesday went back to the hours as council had voted to do. So we were supposed to come back with you tonight if we had any issues. We tested it last week and we're moving full steam ahead.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. And we'll move on to our committee report. The Committee of the Whole met in the main conference room at the administration facility on Monday, August the 17th. Log number 154, ordinance number 586 to amend the Alliance Pickens ordinance for the purpose of allowing local representation of small business on the board according to section 30-35. Councilman Whitehurst made the motion for the section 30-35-3A to be 2 members from the education community ex officio and non-voting, and to move out of the committee for 3rd reading and public hearing of this ordinance. I seconded the motion and it carried unanimously. So at this time, I'd like to gavel us into a public hearing if anyone wants to comment on this ordinance. So is there anybody that wants to say anything? Y'all are such a quiet bunch. Okay, then we'll close public hearing. No second is required because this comes as recommendation from the committee. I would ask for all those in favor for accepting this recommendation to please signify by raising your hands. That motion carries. Log number 142 is a discussion of the old jail. Vice Chairman Bowers made a motion to implement Memorandum of Understanding laying out a plan on how Reverend Moss will implement the facility. Motion was seconded by Councilman Whitehurst, carried unanimously. No second is required because this comes as a recommendation of committee. Is there any discussion on this? I'd ask for all those in favor to signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. Log number 151, Emergency Services Structure. Vice Chairman Bauer stated he would like to make a motion that we push this out of committee for first reading in title only, then to have it recommitted back into the committee. I seconded the motion, and this would be for first reading in title only of ordinance number 590, amending the Uniform Ordinance for Fire Protection Districts as previously enacted by ordinance number 404, as amended by ordinance number 405 and ordinance number 571, to consolidate certain existing fee-payer fire protection districts through the creation of a new unified fire protection district and other matters related thereto. No second is required as this comes as a recommendation for committee. And as I mentioned before, this is just first reading in title only. It will go back into the part of this recommendation, or part of this motion is to put it back into committee for us to have further discussion on that. Is there any discussion here before we vote? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And that motion carries. Log number 148 was the COVID-19 update. No action was taken there. Log number 132 is the solar farm ordinance. Vice Chairman Bowers made a motion to move out of committee for second reading and recommit to the committee for further discussion. It was seconded by Councilman Inslee Feimster, carried unanimously. So this is for first reading, not second reading. Right? Okay, so this is for first reading in title only of ordinance number 591, regulating solar farms in Pickens County. Since no second is required because this comes as a recommendation of committee, I want to first ask if there's any other discussion on the solar farm ordinance. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. And that motion carries. And just so that I made note that it is being recommitted back to the committee of the whole. And I believe that's all I had for my committee report. Item number 6 is council correspondence. And let's see, our next committee of the whole meeting will be this next Monday, September 21st at 6 p.m. in the main conference room of this facility. Our next council meeting will be October the 5th at 6:30 right here in this auditorium. Is there any other correspondence that needs to be announced? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 7. Well, now in the motion period for new business. Does any member have any motions at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we add an economic development update by Administrator Roper and Mr. Farley, as well as an update on Project Jericho.
All right, to executive.
I guess to executive session.
All right, there's to add those two items to executive session.
Second all that.
Second by Councilman Feimster. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. Is there any other new business? All right, we'll move on to item number 8, and this is our solid waste update. And my page is blank, so you got to talk now.
Mr. Chairman, I've asked Director Matt Kelly of Public Works to come and give you an overview. He's given you an extensive handout there in front of you, and I've challenged him to do this overview in 15 minutes. So it's going to be a lot of data quickly, but I'm sure we'll be glad to follow up. So I'll recognize Matt Kelly for that.
Good evening, gentlemen. This is my first opportunity to have a chance to talk with everyone. We've been so busy with our 3 disasters with COVID and with the tornadoes disasters and the floods back in February. So it is an honor to get to speak with you tonight, and hopefully we've got some really good information for us to cover, and it'll be beneficial for all of us to take a look at. Tonight I have some of our entire leadership team for the Public Works Department. I'd like to introduce some of those fellows to you. We have Stacy Kelly, the director of the Animal Shelter. We have Michael Clark as the Roads and Bridges director. We have Rodney Robinson with our engineering staff. We have Jamie Reynolds is our special projects manager for Roads and Bridges. He does a great job for us. And we have Clint Dickey, our Environmental Services Director, also Public Service Commission, and is Solid Waste Director right now. So Those are our leadership team for Public Works. Again, with Team Public Works, we look at almost everything as a team. We have weekly department head meetings, leadership meetings, where we discuss what we're doing that week, what our challenges are, what we had as our successes, and some of the things that I'd like to share with you tonight is one of the things that we had a concern with. DHEC had an issue with our Roper wastewater treatment plant with some of the sludge in it. Our team put some things together, rented some equipment. You'll see this is not our track hoe that we have. We had to rent this track hoe to be able to get some of the sludge out of this particular pond. The guys are working together here. You can see we've got representatives from Roads and Bridges, Public Service Commission, as well as the engineering staff helped with some of the permitting issues, and then our special projects coordinator helped get all this pulled together. Roads and Bridges staff worked as well. Our next thing is something Mr. Roper may have spoke about. We had a major issue with our transfer station floor. The floor was it's 23 years old, and it was so far gone that we had a probe rod that we sunk into through the concrete almost 6 feet. So pretty bad stuff. Here you can see that next photo there, you can see where we've done a test according to what the structural engineer had provided to us. We had to dig a 6 by 20 foot section into concrete, had to anchor the beams. You see the anchor there too, between two beams and the hole that's cut out. The structural engineer analyzed the pad to see what we could do. Then we finalized our designs and then started tearing out the concrete. This was another surprise that we had. I don't know if you can tell in that first photo, but that's standing water under the concrete that we just had tore out. So those issues are never good. The pile of dirt on the other slide, that's the bad material that we had to excavate to get out of the transfer station. And then our next slide shows what we put back with good dirt and added some additional drainage for the transfer station, and then started adding our stone base. The next, you can see where we're getting ready to finalize the stone base, and then started putting the rebar in for the support for the concrete. The next slide, we had the compaction, and next thing we'd like to do is focus particularly on solid waste. Just as a basics for solid waste, the functions of solid waste are collection, transportation, then there's the processing of the solid waste, which is sort, recycle, and loading. Then we have disposal, which includes transportation, potential sales or donations. And then we have our compliance issues where there's reporting, annual reports. We have closed landfills. We have different monitoring reports on our different recycling areas. And then we have to monitor our incoming waste as well. So just to go into a little bit more detail with the collection, we have 8 recycle centers throughout the county. This is a map of where those centers are. Transportation, what does that mean? Well, this is one of our roll-off trucks with a garbage compactor on the back of the roll-off truck. This is how we transport or collect the products from the recycle centers and bring them either to our MRF, which is a municipal recycling facility, or to our different transfer station, or to our C&D landfill. So we'll look at our next slide. And this talks about the process. I've got a map here that kind of shows you what some of our processes are. We have a mulch area, a metal area, the MRF again, which stands for the Municipal Recycling Facility. In that facility, we have cans, plastics, we do electronic waste, different papers, cardboard, batteries, and we have even more stuff, oil and antifreeze and things like that. So the MSW transfer station, that stands for Municipal Solid Waste. That's the household garbage. And then we have an additional transfer station that has just recently been constructed. That is for the C&D transfer station. It's construction and demolition materials. As our C&D landfill continues to grow and get to its capacity, we will then need to transfer that C&D waste to our solid waste facility in Twin Chimneys that we've got our best prices on. If we look at the process again, this is a little bit more inside the MRF. This is a photo of the baler. This is what we use to bale the cardboard or the plastics or the cans, which then we can sometimes sell for a profit. The piece of equipment is a skid steer that's either crushing the cardboard or compacting things to get into the baler so that it can then get even more compacted. Next, we're looking at disposal. Again, this is one of our road tractors and trailers. These are the trailers that we haul the compacted material, either the MSW or the C&D waste, to the Twin Chimneys landfill. The landfill photograph here, you'll see two pieces of equipment. One's a compactor and one's a dozer, track dozer. Those are used at our existing landfill. This is a picture of our existing C&D landfill as we're continuing to finish up and close out this landfill. Another section here, compliance. It's a big part of the solid waste department. Got one of the permits there and lists several of the other types of permits. There's more than this, but this just kind of hits the highlights. We have transfer station permitting, mulch area permitting, closed and open landfill monitoring reports. We have the central landfill that's closed, Easley MSW that's closed, and then our active Easley C&D landfill. We also have underground storage tank permitting. We have a fuel center where we fuel our equipment there at solid waste. We have landfill inspections, MRF inspections, scale house inspections, the active landfill inspections, and solid waste management annual reports. There's some 6 reports that we end up having to do and submit for this. One of those, the bigger ones, is the full cost disclosure reports, and those are required throughout the year. Next, let's look a little bit at the organizational chart. Previously, we had 17 full-time employees, 34 part-time, and up to 10 inmate laborers answer to the director. As we're reorganizing, we're looking at having shift leaders. One of the things that we looked at with the recycle centers is that the attendants needed more attention, more leadership there so that we could have a better communication line directly with those folks. So we've tried to do a shift of 12 folks with one of those folks being a leader so that they can get their questions answered quickly and communicated to very efficiently. The rest of the staff we'll look at putting into one of 5 different functions. We have a function with transfer, that's transferring the waste. We have the recycling facility. We have property management, which would include what we have to do with the landfills and the monitoring and checking for vandalism and all those kind of things. The recycling station attendants, and then administration, where the compliance and those kind of things come into play. As you know, we had our solid waste director has retired, and so in order to take on all these responsibilities, we created a transition team. Those team members were Jamie Reynolds for operations, Rodney Robinson took over the construction aspects, Clint Dickey took over the personnel and permitting. So all the folks that we're adding to the station attendants and new staff, Clint Dickey's taking care of those things. And then I worked through the organizing and restructuring of some of the activities. So what did we do? Here's some of the things that we did. We met with each staff member and conducted a strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats analysis, a SWOT analysis. After we made some of the changes, we went back and did a roses, thorns, and buds follow-up discussions with the group to kind of get feedback from our staff so that we could see what was working, what was not working. Each group we met with that had a major job expectation change, we met with that group and had discussions with them, so the expectations were clearly known, and allowed those folks, if they didn't feel like they could do that work or were not up to the challenge of some of that work, that they could resign with no questions asked, no problems. We just wanted everybody to be up front and know what the new expectations were. Another thing that we did, our transition team members worked alongside staff within each function group. That was each one of us in this transition team did that. I personally was able to had the opportunity to ride with 3 different truck drivers, worked at a couple of different centers, and then also had participated in some of the work that's going on with the transfer stations. And that really helped me get a better insight on what was going on within the department and how each one of the functions work, so that in the big picture of things, it helped me decide some routes to go with the organizational challenges that we had. What are some of the changes that have been implemented? Again, this was with our SWOT analysis. We used those things to kind of lead us and tell us what we needed to do. One of the first things we did was meet some basic needs. There was some deficiencies in our protective equipment. Some of the ice machines, drinking fountains, AC ductwork, some of those things were in bad repair or needed repairs. We had some safety issues with the trailer brakes and some of the other equipment. We did see that there was some communication lapses, and we tried to make some new things move forward with memos, face-to-face meetings, and some things like that. And then we had some regulatory compliance issues as well, so we had to modify some of our processes with our e-waste. We had to dispose of some tires that were on site that were exceeding our permit levels. We had a lot of contaminated bales of recycling that we had to be able to get rid of. There was some sensitive documents that we had to process that had been stored for a while, and then our metal and brush areas were out of compliance with our permits. So we had to get all those things kind of straightened up and moved into compliance. We'll go on to our next one here. Just an overview of our facilities and operations. I know I'm going really fast, but got a lot of information that we want to cover. So our 8 recycling facilities, those current hours, as Mr. Roper had indicated, are Monday through Saturday, 7:30 to 7:20. We have the 3 landfills, as I had mentioned earlier, 2 of them closed and soon to be closed to Easley, C&D. Our solid waste operations campus, it's open, that facility is open 7:30 to 4:20, Monday through Friday. And the facilities there, the scale house, the education and training building, the fleet repair and fueling facility, the transport staging areas, the transfer stations, the MSW and C&D, the MRF, the closed incinerator, the methane flare system, and the yard debris grinding and mulch loading area. So you can see we've kind of put together a master plan of the solid waste campus too, as part of all this strategy that we've been looking at with our transition. There's some new lanes that we would like to look at. We've looked at better efficient truck routing. One of the things that we see as a huge deficiency is we have a single lane scale house. So the scales, as you go in and come out, you have to go across the same scale. We see that as a pretty big bottleneck. Some of the areas where we have our mulch area, it causes traffic to go back on itself. So a lot of these things we've looked at with this master plan to try to correct some of those issues. Go on to the next one. Next thing we looked at was our garbage, our MSW. Where does it all come from? So if we look at that pie graph, we can see that the cities produce about 17,000 tons, and our recycle centers bring in about 15,000 tons. Residents bring in another 1,400, and then commercial haulers bring in about 4,000. So that's a total of about 37,000 tons of garbage that we have come into our transfer station. How about our C&D? Where does it come from? So that breakdown is very similar. And if you notice, we're 36,700 on the C&D. So almost the same amount of tonnage of our MSW as we do on our C&D. We have a similar split with the cities bringing in about 17,000 tons. Our recycle centers with 11,000. And I'm going to get to this again just in a little bit, but C&D and brown goods are the same thing. So just remember that whenever we look at some of our different graphs in the future. We've got about 6,000 that comes in commercial, and we have about 4,000 additional C&D from our residents. So we'll skip on to our next one. So I know these are really small, but as I mentioned just before, the brown goods, if you notice, that color is not quite as brown as it is on my slide, but the brown goods you see in the big piece of the pie there, that is the huge amount that we're looking at bringing in. So the C&D, brown goods originally, as what DHEC defined that in the past, that was basically furniture. But now in Pickens County, that has become more of miscellaneous. So it's C&D material that we're bringing in, and that's a huge amount of stuff that we're having to take in and dispose of. The other aspect of that is that's a deletion from our revenue potential. So a lot of times what happens is our contractors are using our recycle centers to dump off their construction and demolition debris. So that's why we have such a high brown goods total. It looks really bizarre, but that is true. We're going to get to some benchmarking here at the end of the slide presentation, and I want to talk to you about brown goods again. So we're going to kind of skip on ahead, but I want to keep going and keep hammering that about the brown goods. So what is the data based on each center? I've got a breakdown of each one of the centers. You can see there that this is actually what each center brings in, the totals or the breakdown of the different goods. We've got easily with about 2,000 and Best Pack. Those are two of the busiest centers as far as pulls. And what we mean by pulls is the full containers that we go and transport back to our different facilities at solid waste. Those are the big blue containers we saw earlier with the roll-off trucks. Those are what we're talking about, pulls. It's a little bit easier to see what a pull is versus tons of plastic versus tons of garbage, and there's volume ratios with the density that's associated with garbage and C&D. It's much more dense, and you carry more tons than you would if you carried the same volume of cans and plastic. So that's why we decided to describe this in pulls rather than in tonnage. I think it makes a little bit more sense that way. You still have the same amount of cost in the trip costs, the trucks and the drivers, whether it's 1,200 tons of plastic or 1,200 pounds of plastic versus 3 tons of C&D. So it's just the same transportation cost. The similar stations are North Old Pendleton, Chastain Road, and Midway Station. The least busy, of course, is Travelers Rest, Table Rock, and Dacusville. So one interesting thing is that Table Rock and Dacusville combined to equal about the same amount as Willow Springs, which I found to be kind of unusual. Willow Springs is the one I use most often, and it's a really tight facility. You would think it would be less because it's so small, but it's getting a lot of use. So that's one of the things we might want to look at in the future as well, is that particular center. As we look at the next slide here, we've got a cost based on product. So if you look at our total cost in our transportation, if we look at our replacement costs on our cans, we look at our cost on our fuel, maintenance on our vehicles, and our depreciation costs on our vehicles, That adds up to an annual cost of around $505,000. When we break that down into the mileage of the pools and the number of pools, we can get a cost per mile. That cost per mile is, with the data that we have right here, which is the best available that I had, it's about $3.60 a mile. So we use that and we know the mileage for each one of the centers, and that's where we're getting this cost. Again, what this does for you is it shows you how much it costs us to transport the brown goods. It's closing in on about half of the pie, half of the cost. So another thing to think about, the cost of the brown goods. The compactor, which is the MSW, and the cardboard are about the same. You can see there. We get some money out of cardboard, so that's a good thing. We have to pay for the disposal of the garbage, but a good graph here nonetheless to look at. Next here we have another interesting piece of the pie here is that if you notice, Chastain Road, Bestpac, and Willow Springs, those costs are virtually the same for the annual cost. And again, this is based on the distance and the number of pools. So those are all pretty equal. The least expensive, obviously, is Easley because it's so close. The haul distance is just not that far. So with our landfill being right there, that's an obvious thing that it's that much that much cheaper. So another thing Mr. Roper had asked me to look at for you is to show what DHEC provides for us. This is a really hard to see on this type of slide, but basically what we're looking at is every month DHEC puts out a recycling as a commodities based value. Now, some of these things you can see we can't get some of the costs because of the local economies. We just don't have the partnerships that we've developed yet to be able to get those. But you'll see that just about anything that is commingled now it costs you more to get rid of it. So when you see the negative, that means it costs you $60 a ton to get rid of it versus if it's high grade or they actually grade the bales, and if you get a high grade on it, you get more money for those grades. The commingled, you don't get any money for those. So we'll skip on from there. Like I said, there's a lot of good information in here that we can look at in a work session closer. Want to go back to recycling as a commodity. Looking at this. This is a summary of what we had for our different quantities. One of the good things to look at here is that with our recyclables, we actually were able to divert about 16,000 tons from our MSW, or having to pay for that. So if you look at that from $17.50 a ton is what we have to pay to as a tipping fee at Twin Chimneys landfill. That's diverted. That means it saves us about $285,000 in tipping fees. The net revenue that we looked at for our recycling revenue was around $212,000. Again, this is data that our solid waste department has not really followed or tracked as well in the past. So I'm not real comfortable with all these numbers, but I think they're pretty close. But if we change some of our practices and look at some different things a little bit, I think we could get our net revenues to approach about $300,000. Some of the potential profitable markets that we have are, if we can develop some partnerships, are the clear glass markets, the aluminum cans, scrap metals, and cardboards. Our two biggest profits were seen in scrap metal and in cardboard this last year as far as revenues. One of the things we wanted to share with you tonight too was recycling as a commodity. This again is what we talked about with the SWAT. Some of the strengths of recycling as a commodity is we have good facilities. We have 8 existing recycling locations, and our sorting is done at the center, so we don't have to pay for machinery or personnel at our MRF to recycle to sort the recyclables. So some of the weaknesses, okay, the recycling is easily contaminated by our current practices. So if we aren't watching all the time, sometimes these recyclables get contaminated. The transportation of cans and plastics are inefficient based on our weight to ratio volume. And our current plan with the transfer station, we don't have any sorting potential for the recycling. If we look at our opportunities, we want to continue to develop partnerships with potential industry users. We want to explore sorting options at the C&D transfer stations. And we'd like to get more creative with our plastics, cans, and garbage. Maybe we could do some kind of grinding or melting of plastics. Maybe we can do something with the crushing of the cans. Maybe we can do something with composting the garbage. Again, these are not ideas that are fully vetted out, but just some things that we're thinking about in this SWOT analysis. What are the threats? The recycling as a commodity is often misunderstood or misrepresented. A lot of times, for example, we may have equipment breakdown and we have to tell staff at the recycling center, guys, we can't pick anything up. You'll need to get the plastics, and just ask the folks to go ahead and put those in the MSW. The public misunderstands that as us not wanting to recycle. They don't understand we've had equipment breakdowns and things like that, and that we can't. It's cheaper for us to throw that away than to try to provide alternate storage or additional storage on the smaller spaces that we already have. So a lot of times that gets misunderstood. And other times if the bales get contaminated, rather than paying $60 a ton for somebody to come get it, it's cheaper for us to haul it off and dispose of it at Twin Chimneys for $17.50 a ton. So sometimes we get beat up in the public about that, but sometimes, treating it as a commodity, that's the best result for the taxpayer. So another threat is that the department is understaffed and budgeted, and it's to the point that the public and staff safety is a really big concern right now. Let's go to the benchmarking questions. I think this is going to be kind of eye-opening. This kind of drives the point home with the brown goods stuff as well. I've got Pickens, Anderson, Greenville, and Oconee counties listed here. Some of the questions are staff recycling center. We have 8. It ranges from 13 to 6 as far as the other counties. The other counties do have some unstaffed recycling centers. If you look a little closer at that, those are very minimal. It's usually cans, cardboard, and some plastics. So it's not like what we have at all as far as a staffed center. Let's look at the hours of operation there. You can see Pickens County has virtually 72 hours a week of operation at the centers. Anderson has 60 hours. Greenville has 55 hours, and Oconee has 50 hours. So Pickens leads the way with the hours of operations. Another thing is holidays. Most of the communities follow the standard county holidays. Greenville does just do the 4 major holidays and is open on more of the holidays. The next question is accept brown goods. So we're the only county that accepts brown goods. Anderson County does take furniture at some of their stations. I think there's 6 of the 10 recycle centers. They take furniture only, not the miscellaneous stuff. What Pickens County accepts. Is yard debris accepted in any of these? Greenville does accept yard debris. We do accept the yard debris at the Easley Center after the scale house closes and on Saturdays, but that's the only center that we do that. Cardboard recycling, with compactors. So Oconee County uses compactors. It cuts their pulls or their haul trips into a third. So 3 open top pulls versus 1 compactor pull. Maybe something that we want to look into in the future and see if the return on investment is something that we can do. Last slide here is kind of thoughts and assessments. One of the things that we're looking at, again, this is kind of just jumping out into the deep end, but we'd like for considering the benefits of a 2-lane scale house. That's going to have an inbound and outbound scale lane. It's going to increase your through traffic into your landfill. It may encourage contractors to come and dump at the C&D rather than taking things and have to hand load it and unload it at the recycle centers. If they could do their dump trailers and dump it quickly and get in and out, that may be an encouragement to help us eliminate some of the stuff at the brown goods. Benefits of eliminating acceptance of brown goods at the recycle centers, cut our trips down considerably. Consider compacting the cardboard and consider some emergency funding for the top 5 items listed. So our containers are in desperate need of repair. We have 24 of the open top and 4 of the garbage containers that's got holes in them. It leaks out the garbage. The papers and cardboards are blowing out the end of it. All we have is safety chains on some of those things. Our transfer station for the C&D, the piece of equipment that we currently have is rated too big or too heavy to be used in that transfer station, so we need a skid steer to, right now we're having to rent one. We'd like to use iPad technology, some improved technology for monthly service for about $1,000. We've got air compressor that we need for about $24,000. Upgrade the landfill roads and scale house for around $320,000. Cardboard compactors at around $320,000, and possible reconfiguration of Willow Springs for around $650,000. So, Mr. Roper, that concludes what I've got. If there's a couple of questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
I know that's a lot of information, members of council. I know that that's a lot of information he put together because he wanted to give you that overview. I want to give you the opportunity to ask questions, but thank you so much for patience as we went through all that, a lot of data. But these are the sort of things we're starting to track now, and we wanted you to know that.
So one of the questions that I would have initially, which I don't expect an answer to right now, you talk about emergency funding for specific items. Where are you to your budget that we originally approved? Are we over? Are we under? Or are we? I mean, when you begin to look at the entire budget for your department, is there savings already there, or is this? So that I would like to know what the numbers are before we start making emergency funding recommendations.
And I think this is intended by Director Kelly to put it on your radar. They're within budget and finish the year within budget, but we've got these threats coming out there that we'll have to talk about more and more and more.
What other questions do you guys have?
I got a question on the transfer station. It said, we just built this new transfer station. I understand the equipment we have is too heavy for the floor. Is that a problem on our side, or is that a problem on the engineering side that they didn't reinforce that floor strong enough to handle the piece of equipment that we now have? And now we're going to have to buy another piece of equipment.
You talking about the MSW transfer or the
Whatever we need the new
C&D
piece of
transfer?
equipment for.
C&D?
Yeah, well, no, for the transfer station, new transfer station. It said that we needed to buy a new piece of equipment because the floor wouldn't handle the piece of equipment we have. It looks to me like, is that a problem with the people that designed the transfer station? Because it has to be up to a certain level to hold that piece of equipment. Shouldn't they have designed that to hold that piece of equipment?
I'll be glad to answer that. Part of it is the design of the transfer station. If you've seen both of these transfer stations, it's quite a bit smaller than what the MSW transfer station is. So the equipment that we have that we use to push in the MSW transfer station is way too big to be able to get and maneuver inside of the C&D transfer station. So it's not a weight or capacity thing. It's more of a maneuverability type thing. And the engineer that designed it used the skid steer that we're actually having to rent right now. We're using the C&D transfer station as a temporary MSW transfer station. I didn't want to put all that in the slides, but we're doing that in order to keep C&D moving, MSW moving while we're making the MSW transfer station floor repairs.
So why was it designed for use with a skid steer when we don't have one?
It should have been budgeted. It was not.
I also heard that facility is so small it's really tough to get the trucks in there. And so I guess my question is, why didn't we?
Did the engineering firm not realize what we were doing?
Right. When I heard that, I said, well, why was that not on the engineer? Why wasn't that engineered better? I mean, it should be able to be big enough to where you don't have to back it into a place you don't have that much space on each side to get it in.
Yes, sir. Well, one of the things that happened with that is that the design specifics that were given or provided was it's called a yard truck or a yard dog. It has a much smaller turning radius that can enter into the bays. So that was not used. We're not going to be able to use that. But what's happened is we've gone in and the Roads and Bridges staff has gone in and modified the entrance and has added some additional stuff. Things were cut out of the budget when the transfer station went over budget. And with the staff that we had available, we went ahead and made some of those corrections. So I would not say it was an engineering design flaw. It was more of a specifications that were provided to the engineer did not meet with what the reality of the equipment that was going to be used.
And I don't want to get into his personal space, but I do want to point out that, and we'll provide this to you, that when this building was spec'd out, when this building was engineered, this predates Mr. Kelly by years.
I
Okay,
know.
so it's not something that he's had to deal with it on the back.
I have a
Mr.
question.
Feimster?
I have a whole bunch of tires that are still mounted on the wheels. Do I need to take them off the wheel, and that way you get some money for the metal?
I want to ask yes,
Okay.
we do. I'm sorry, I don't know all the answers because there's different facilities. I've worked for 18 years in different public sector settings, and everybody has a different way of doing that, and I had to ask for sure about what we do at Pickens County here. So
There's one more thing. I see in electronics we're paying money on that. I'm thinking that if there were somebody that could take the computers that aren't completely worn out and dust them up, and maybe some of those could be resold.
yes, sir. That was one of the things that we had talked about that we wanted to, we could see as a potential revenue for the future. This revenue or this cost or expense was from the past, so that's the fiscal year ending 2020, so we had to pay for that. I think just recently we have had some folks give us some money for our e-waste.
Yes, we've actually been paid. We have a new contract with Synergy. The concern is that there's a lot of heavy metals and hazardous materials, and so there's laws about reselling or reusing and the way you dispose of those electric waste.
We're also going to realize some additional revenue from selling of our batteries as well for this year. So,
Councilman Whitehurst?
It seems to me our being the only county that's accepting the brown goods Is that unusual in your experience in the past? You've said you've worked with several counties.
It is, and the reason is about 10 years ago, everybody started seeing how much the miscellaneous brown goods was being abused by, it's just quicker for those contractors to run in there and dump some stuff out. And what happens is we're not getting that revenue for the disposal of that waste. We're actually carrying it for free, and the taxpayers are paying for that burden of transporting the brown goods.
I feel like we're carrying that burden for Anderson and Greenville and Oconee as well.
We
because
very well could, especially on the fringes. Some of those recycle centers are catching it.
I would like to look, do those places take it directly to the C&D landfill?
Yes, sir.
And I know it's great convenience for us to do this, but it's a large expense, and I feel like it's probably abused a lot, not just by contractors here, but contractors in other counties.
I would love to come back and talk to you with some more detail. And
what I'd like to do is to, if we can, Mr. Chairman, is direct some thought into this. We're trying to make this thing work so we don't have to charge for this. And we're trying to figure out the ways to create income and reduce costs. Well, I don't mind taking care of Pickens County, but the problem is I think we're taking care of all these other counties, and just looking at our hours of operation, we're open at 7:20, Anderson closes at 6. I'm willing to bet there's a lot of Anderson people driving over here and dropping their stuff here, and the Pickens County taxpayers paying for it.
yes, sir.
So I'd like to look at how to control that, but also we need to talk about this brown goods thing and try to figure out how much of this is outside of our county coming in there, and there are some ways to look at doing it differently.
But didn't they have, y'all still monitor those stickers on the windows for Pickens County residents?
Yes, sir. It is, but it's super hard. I mean, you have an attendant that's out there that's, we've got them running around cleaning up behind the cans now, and they're one of the lowest paid folks in our county. And we're trying to ask them to be policemen with telling, contractors they can't throw stuff away. I've been out on site on a Saturday, and we had one of the attendants trying to get somebody that had a 16-foot dump trailer full of stuff, and it's all we could do to get them to just kind of keep on driving through and saying, hey, you're blocking it up for everybody else. But we know good and well they're a contractor. I mean, it's on their uniform, and it's just hard to do that, and the sheriff deputies are not going to come out and try to. That's not one of their high priority things to do, is to be the trash.
So this is something we need to talk about as a policy for the council. Vice Chairman Bowers.
When you're thinking about this that Councilman Whitehurst is talking about, and I don't totally disagree with you, Councilman Whitehurst, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't see something about litter in Pickens County. There's not a week that goes by that I don't get a complaint about trash in somebody's yard. And if you start cutting out the convenience, it's only going to get worse. So I do challenge you, as you think about, and I'm looking at Administrator Roper here, as you think about these kinds of things, keep that in mind. Because it's as real as I'm saying.
Especially the furniture.
Well, I understand. The same thing with the cans. You can say we're not going to accept cans, but these centers, because it costs us more money to move them than we make off of them. But you got to be careful, or where are you going to find your cans?
It's a huge challenge. It's a lot of work, but that's part of the reason we wanted to give you all this data.
Do we have this in the committee of the whole so we can add to our agenda, or do we need to add this to the consent agenda?
I don't believe it's in the committee of the whole.
Is this something that you guys want to add to the consent?
Yes.
Sure.
So a motion to add to consent, second by Councilman Whitehurst. Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor, signify by raising your hand. We'll put it in the committee of the whole and talk about it.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you so much. Our next item on the agenda is the request from the Elections Office. Again, a blank sheet of paper.
Thank you, gentlemen. I've asked, we've got this is kind of a technicality in that we have some information coming from the state, some equipment coming from the state, but they're asking us to pick up a maintenance responsibility in a future budget year. So I wanted Mr. Alexander to be able to demonstrate this to you, and so I'll yield to him.
It's always frightening when you came in with a cart full of stuff.
No, thank you.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna go over the basic, y'all, everybody has your whole location. Currently now, we use what we call PDRL computer. You go in, checklist, we have your ID out. We have about 30 of these in the county. I tried to buy another 30, and $5,000. So my whole manager had basically everything known names for the person. All right. The only time we come in here is you got a junior or third or whatever, and they're trying to get them out the whole manager. I think it's about 10, 11 hours in, they won't really get that last part of the night. Okay? Some of our precincts are very large. I'm combining about 5 precincts. So they will get 2 of these. And you know, by the land board, the land, putting it up, since these are state computers, our IT department does not test it. So I have to figure out how to do the land part and also do the forward. All right? As the polls go through, they'll pull you up. You sign the vote, okay? So you have 2 people, you know, one person that side, one person that side, so you got 4 people working. They will then look at your ballot. In Pickens County, the original, this election is 113 ballots now. Okay? Some precincts gonna have 5 or 6 ballots out. You got the watersheds, you got the school boards, things of that nature. You also got the city of Clemson election too. That it's weird because you got some precincts, Clemson runs in and out of precincts. That's what that happens. So my poll managers have to look at that computer and say, like this one says D1. Name D1. They then give that, after they verify the person, they give that person the ballot, right? They also give them like a ballot card. I guess it says 1.36. And they go to the machine. Now you have another poll manager that then look at 1.36 and do the code. Now they do the Q-tips. They get in, and that poll manager is now responsible for making sure that they got the right ballot style. All right. So let's give you the cost here. I'm gonna give you what the state has added here. We got what they call an e-poll book. The e-poll book, they want to, we have about 78,000 registered voters here in Pickens.
Thank you, sir.
We have 78,000 registered voters here in Pickens. They want to give us 122 e-polls, like you see here. That e-poll book now will eliminate all of this. The voter will come up with their ID, that swivel around and take a picture of that, they'll scan the back of your ID, pull your name up, pull up your ballot style, attach that e-poll book, will be in the printer, like so. And also a signature tag. And this is what I'm new with the pandemic going on. It's an antimicrobial pen.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna have sanitizer next to it. But now, instead of signing that whole list that you saw, that I had to turn to the state to give you credit, you're gonna sign this electronic signature, go to that e-poll book. Also, your ballot style, if your ballot style 1, that whole manager at that table now takes one person to put it in a printed barcode. He's the one who won't tell you what the ballot style is to the printed barcode. Now the voter can go over to the machine. We'll still have a poll manager here. The poll manager now decides to the machine. The poll manager is not responsible for the ballot style. It goes to the machine, it pulls up the exact ballot style as that voter is in the system. They have secure Wi-Fi on my side, actually. I'm scared about some of our precincts. I'm gonna have a probably pre-load thing for all the voters, the last day to absentee voters November 2nd. I can send out whatever, to each precinct of all the absentee voters that voted. So now when you go up to the, checking that you voted, it will say already voted. That voter has to come to our county office or do research, they say they didn't vote. They got an absentee ballot, it will say automatically absentee ballot. In the precincts where the nonprofit works constantly, if you are at Rock Springs, and you're supposed to be at, we have 3 precincts, right, so, Sydney, Calvin, 2 of them. But if you go up to the one of them and you're at the council, it'll say, you need to go to the city. So you can get to the correct precinct to vote. Now, if you voted at one of the precincts, you try to go across town to another area. You walk in, it's gonna say already voted. I'll have a dashboard on my computer in our office. I can get live updates on how a precinct is going, if I need to send more, ballots out or anything like that. From the state, y'all currently getting, but currently I have $1.4 million worth of equipment. That includes 300 express votes, like machines, 68 scanners, the tabulator. We have on-demand printer, and you have some election software. Since I've been here, I have requested one thing from the state they have given me, but the cost of it per year is like $150. But for that, see, you can send 12 curbside cards, 7 additional scanners, and have some satellite offices. A $6,000 50 vote letter opener, some curbside cards about $800. And then go to the printer. The printer, I got 6 of those for satellite office. Cost, which will start July 2022. To keep those e-posts for firmware is $14,000. All right. So the cost of all the e-posts together is $1,119. All right. And the cost. We're going to have on-the-ground support for those machines this election, and also for our city elections next year. So any problem with them, we have on-ground support. Like the equipment we already have, we had, when I came in May, they sent somebody to cool them down. We had on-ground support for any issue, so that person goes to the precinct. So the same thing with this, so we have good on-the-ground treatment for that, and also it's a 2-year one. That's why we went out to July 2022. So the request is, I do have to tell the state yes or no. I can tell them yes, and if y'all eventually say no, we'll have to go back to using paper, or go back to updating and buying new EDRs.
Questions?
I have a legal question.
Go ahead.
Can we bond the next council for a $14,000 a year? And when I say the next, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025?
The answer, and the attorney's looking at me, but this is exactly why I brought it to you. I knew I couldn't, so that's exactly why I told Travis he needs to come talk with y'all. We need, I understand and am very impressed. I was impressed as I watched you all be impressed about how efficient and great this would be.
You could almost vote anywhere with that machine. If
Yeah,
they would load
exactly.
every ballot style on there and it prints the barcode, you could almost vote anywhere if that was allowed, but it's not.
It's not.
We're not going there.
But if
you could.
But if we needed to set up precincts
You like
wherever,
that?
you could do it.
We will have satellite office.
You like that, Travis?
We will
You
have
like
satellite
that?
office. All right, and in those satellite offices, you will be able to vote, Easy Library, the Central Clinton Library, Pickens Library, and also here, which is very free. So we're kind of using that system already for absentee, we're just having a laptop doing it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tell him yes the minute he described it to me, but I also knew that I wanted you all to be fully up to speed on what yes meant.
Well, just to be clear, our policy is that we voted when we came on board, as far as not encumbering future councils with
That's
things,
what I'm saying.
was after the election. So once you know November the 3rd, going forward, that we didn't want to, we set it to where you really
How
couldn't.
many years is this contract?
The The machines that we have now are slated for 20 years.
So, I mean,
This service contract
Oh, it's per year.
per year, so you could cancel it at any time.
You cancel it, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, so they're giving us the poll books. We're paying $14,000 a year for updated software and stuff like that. And essentially, if I'm understanding this right, every household is gonna be a unique address, is gonna be unique inside of that machine.
Yes.
Are you gonna program all that?
Technically, we already do. Every time a person registers, we actually upload them to the.
Well, I'm saying because that poll that has a ballot attached to it and everything else, so all that's gonna,
It pulls from our state site.
so it'll pull from all that. So is there a increase, escalating cost to this 14,000? Say, they decide, well, we're gonna now double it, and then in 4 years, we're paying, $58,000 a year.
From the contract from the state, Marcy, that's the contract that we in place for.
So there's no, it's a set amount, and if we decide that we're not, saying 4 years, we're not gonna do it, then we basically have to start over.
We'll be using paper.
So by doing this, we lock ourselves down a path with the whole state to somebody. Okay, so what about all the equipment we have? Is that now gonna be just
obsolete.
Oh, you mean the EVRL? Yes. I mean, just like the others, Ivotronic that we.
all that stuff?
Yes.
Um,
But, that's property of the county, so.
So what happens when these machines just locks down, breaks, tears up, then what?
The same as we do with an EVRL now. I mean, if somebody's an EVRL and it breaks down, we send a rover out, but I still have to keep the paper list, that's been long. So they still have the paper list, they still mark, that set. So it's still the same, concept as the electronic breakdown.
So now, if an ID don't scan, can it be entered manually?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We request that everybody use this electronic ID, it will easily scan, and if it does not scan, it can do the, three letters of the last name, a couple of the first name.
is that new South Carolina ID?
Doesn't matter.
The new one that's supposed to be in October, doesn't matter either that or an old?
It's not expired.
Okay.
People are asking me in Clemson, can they, once they vote on their absentee ballot, can they carry it to the library to turn it in?
Yes,
Okay.
now according to the legislation that's in place, that probably passed real soon, we will have absentee clerks, we probably have 45 absentee clerks, we have to visually look at it, and visually say, this your absentee ballot, make all the signatures on the back before we accept it. So the news that they're reporting about drop off, you can't check it, drop it off. So we will verify that that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Will this cut down on the number of poll workers that you have to have?
Well, the state gives us 400 poll workers. I've been having to use that number, due to, not having a reimbursement. I can only use the amount of workers I have to get that reimbursement money back to use for the election.
So if it cuts down on what you need at each poll site, you could use some of those workers as runners, right?
Yes, or here, we probably gonna have about 6,000 absentee ballots open up. I can use some people, now here at our office to actually open up those 6,000 ballots.
Okay.
So I sent an email today to Administrator Roper from NACO about a $250 million worth of grant money that's available specifically. I don't know if it would apply to this.
Yes, that's more, for accessibility. Mr. Clark sent me that email. Amy, Dr. Amy is actually working on that. That's due October 1st.
Yeah.
So we've been working on my budget as well as signs. So we're working on that for signs, curbside stuff.
Could that help to offset other costs that we could apply towards this?
I don't know if we're gonna work for election stuff, because it specifically says, accessibility and training. So I will have to have somebody train, we hope, like, run somebody down the train and take them, training for.
Okay. Okay.
Just so I understand, this doesn't affect the actual poll, the machine itself. So all that, we still have our regular, the machine itself is still secure. This is just basically administrative reduction.
You can check it, or, if somebody wants to vote twice, or like I said, big
Okay.
thing, they receive the ballot already at home.
Okay.
What do you think the weaknesses are of this system you're pitching?
I don't think anything, because, one thing I looked at, it's kind of crazy, that each will leave that area, I can set it down, just like your cell phone. I can lock those, equipment, if I'm sending out something to a precinct, I'm sending out that precinct. And then my poll workers won't have certain codes that I have, they will just have poll workers, they won't have administrative pieces.
Who else is using the system?
Every county was out there. Well, it was, the last email, it was 14 counties that did not confirm as of Monday.
So out of 46, we're one of the 14.
All the other kids are doing it.
Well, it's
All the other
because,
kids are doing
no, it's actually, and I'll say this, and I'm giving you a hard time, and the question I ask is actually a legitimate question, but we don't really have an option. I mean, they're pushing this is what they're gonna supply, this is what they're gonna support. That means what you got right there, wherever those old laptops are with the scanners, we're literally gonna go back to paper. You print off paper sheets and they're gonna take a ruler and a pen and mark names off as they vote. That's the way it's gonna work. You know that as well as I do, because the state's gonna support what the state's gonna support. So we don't really have an option.
Yep.
But for Councilman Whitehurst's sake, I had to ask the hard questions because it's another state pushing something down, right?
Right, but at least this seems to be something that's gonna help you.
I actually like it. I think it's a pretty good.
Yeah, balance that one, I mean, y'all, don't see a lot of calls, but we had some people that called, in primary, hey, I didn't see such and such on my ballot. We tell people now, since you got that paper ballot, don't have to put it into the machine, go back to the poll worker and get that corrected before you put it into the machine. This system now,
It's all taken care of.
The only thing that would be a problem is that voter gave the wrong address. So the voter gave the wrong address, it's in the system.
Right. Can I ask a question unconcerning all this? I wanted to ask you this, 'cause I didn't get a chance after last election. I had several people come up to me and said at certain precincts, there were people telling people how to vote, poll workers. What's your policy on dealing with that?
I move people, I do some extra people to those people. There was a concern in one of the precincts, that same statement, they put a formal complaint. We looked at that formal complaint, we did talk to those poll managers, passed the side, so obviously, if somebody, one person said A, one person said B, I'm looking to listen to person, so I'm having to find some other source, some other poll manager to kind of verify that now.
I understand.
Put my trust in the poll manager, but I have made some choices for switching people to some of those issues.
Yep.
And then being drafting, very careful with that, we don't make it all part, there's one part.
Thank you. That sounds like you handled it well.
When you look at this, does this automatically just transfer to the main station up here to be counted? Because we have poll workers standing out in the cold with machines to be downloaded. Is this something that's gonna cut all that out?
No, they won't have, the poll workers won't have.
His actual last process with the last election, Chairman and I actually came up here.
I was here too.
The process is all your heavy equipment, everything major. He had an army behind the building unloading cars. And literally you walked in and I didn't see anybody waiting outside.
No, nobody waited for anything.
It's the best it's ever been.
It really,
Well, I was talking about the time before,
but he fixed it last
He
time,
wasn't
I'm
here the
saying.
time before
with the
that.
new machines, is it gonna change that process?
So all this does is one of the bags that they carry with a laptop, I'm imagining you'll leave this and, yeah.
And we'll reduce, like I said, the paper, now I have to take the whole staff, everybody's finished down to the state, I drive around the country. But now it's gonna be there, voters say that I vote, easily look online, find the signatures, I can compare it with their past, their voter registration, make sure it was that person. So, it kind of makes sense.
I will say you have been a breath of fresh air.
Yes, sir.
That has been long needed. And I thought it ran great.
Do you need a vote from us or just a or what do you need from us? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and thank you again for all your hard work.
Mr. Chairman, do you think it would be more comfortable if we made a motion to support this after 2022 or 2022?
I'd like to make,
I'll make the motion that we'll support this $14,000 a year service contract so that Mr. Alexander can notify the state.
I'll second that. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. Thank you, sir.
It's always safer to have it on the record.
All right, item number 10. It's going to be a surprise to me, too. Okay, here we go. Item number 10 is consideration of resolution number 2020-11 certifying property located at 1859 Dacusville Highway in Easley as a textile mill site pursuant to the South Carolina Textile Community Revitalization Act, Title 12, Chapter 65 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina, 1976, as amended. I ask for a motion and second to consider resolution 20-11.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Feemster,
Second.
second by Vice Chairman Bowers. Discussion.
So it doesn't affect us anyway. I'm in favor.
Any other discussion? All those in favor to go along with Councilman Whitehair signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. Item number 11 is consideration of resolution 20-12 proclaiming September as Veteran Suicide Prevention Month for September 10th, 2020 as Prevents Day. I ask for a motion and a second to consider this resolution.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Feemster,
Second.
second by Vice Chairman Bowers. Do you want me? I'll read the resolution. So this is a resolution proclaiming September 20th as Veteran Suicide Prevention Month and September 10th as Prevents Day. Whereas suicide is a national public health challenge that causes immeasurable pain among individual families and communities across the country. And whereas accounting for 47,173 deaths in 2017, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, with veteran and military suicides exceeding 6,000 each year from 2008 through 2017. And whereas Pickens County has had the highest suicide rate per 100,000 in the state of South Carolina, and whereas on March 5th, 2019, the President signed Executive Order 13861, calling for the development of a comprehensive plan, the President's roadmap to empower veterans and end a national tragedy of suicide, or prevents the roadmap to empower veterans, end suicide through coordinated suicide prevention efforts, prioritize research activities, and strengthen collaboration from across the public and private sectors. And whereas for every individual who feels alone, ashamed, or believes that they would be a burden if their thoughts or feelings were shared, there are scores of others in every community who want to help but are not sure how. And whereas businesses in Pickens County are in the unique position to leverage the learnings from employees, including veterans, to encourage a national discussion on mental health and well-being in the workplace and collaborate on meaningful solutions. And whereas the Department of Veteran Affairs has a governor's challenge to prevent suicide among service members, veterans, and their families that brings together interagency teams to address veteran suicide at the state level. And whereas the Prevents National Public Health Campaign REACH seeks to increase awareness of mental health issues and suicide prevention to reduce suicide for all Americans. And whereas the Pickens County Veterans Office has shared that the South Carolina Department of Veterans Affairs has also partnered with the South Carolina Department of Mental Health, the DAO-DAS, for a PSA on veteran suicide prevention with the campaign #Hope Lives in South Carolina. And whereas Governor Henry McMaster proclaimed September 2020 as Veteran Suicide Prevention Month and September 10th, 2020 as Prevents Day. Now therefore be it resolved that Pickens County Council does hereby proclaim September 20th, 2020 as Veteran Suicide Prevention Month and September 10th, 2020 as Prevents Day, and encourages all Pickens County citizens to work together to identify veterans and other citizens in need of care, raise awareness of mental health, suicide prevention, lethal means safety, and support services available in their communities, and encourage all those in need to reach to access help, hope, and community. The council encourages the public to call a veteran to let him or her know there is hope. Help and information is also available 24 hours at 1-800-273-8255 or text HOPE4SC to 741-741. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. That motion carries. Item number 12 is public hearing to establish the annual millage to meet the budgetary requirements for the county for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021. So I'll now gavel us in for a public hearing on millage. Does anybody have anything they want to say?
Hey, good evening. I just want to go over the recommended fiscal year 2021 millage rates. We would need approval in order for the bills to go out October the 1st. As the administrator said earlier, the only change this year will be for county operating millage. The recommended millage would be 51.7 mills, and that is a difference of 1.3 mills that will be set aside for county capital. Be 3.1 mills for bonded indebtedness, 5.9 mills for library, 2.4 mills for Tri-County Tech, 1.4 mills for county sewer, 51.5 mills for Vineyards Fire District, 15.5 mills for Shady Grove Fire District, and 39.6 mills for Springs Fire District.
Thank you very much. Do y'all have any questions? Is there anybody else that needs to speak? Thank you very much for your help.
Guy wanted to raise his hand back there.
Yes, sir. Okay, you can't ask Mr. Roper, but you can come up here to the podium and you can ask. It's public hearings where you can speak, and then we can see how we can help you.
Yeah, because I was, I'm attended at one of the recycling centers. And as I was asking Mr. Roper, I told him, they want us to clean out from under the compactors.
I can't understand what you're saying.
Oh.
Yeah, this is a public hearing on the millage.
I'll be at work tomorrow. What, you don't want me to work tomorrow?
Well, be happy to help you. I have no idea what. You can call it to the county offices and someone will be happy to help you if Mr. Roper is not available, or whenever you can call. But we'll be happy to try to solve whatever problem you have. Is there anybody else that needs to speak on the millage? All right, hearing none, we'll close out our public hearing on that. Now, this is item number 13. This will open up our public hearing and third reading of an ordinance number 589 to amend the accommodation tax ordinance for Pickens County so as to make it more uniformly applied to the accommodations within the county. It was just a public hearing. It didn't, okay. The agenda did not say to vote on that, so all right, so we'll go back to item number 12 and vote on the millage.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman, on the millage?
Yes, sir.
So the 1.3 difference in operating going towards capital, has the value of the mill increased so that operations don't have to be, or is operation decreased?
The answer is different from that question. We created operational millage, and it covered everything.
We split it.
And so we're splitting it off in keeping with y'all's goals for the year. And we're going to have to continue to claw more into that to make it cover everything.
I just wanted that to be clear. I understand that. I really just wanted that to be clear, that we're doing the same thing, but we're making it more line item friendly.
Okay, so you've got the millage in front of you. Is there any other discussion before we take a vote? All those in favor of the millage as presented, please indicate by raising your hand. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Item number 13, public hearing and third reading, ordinance 589 to amend the accommodations tax ordinance for Pickens County so as to make it more uniformly applied to accommodations within the county. So this opens up for discussion on our public hearing for ordinance number 589. Basically, for those that don't know, we're actually changing the accommodations tax to make it more in line with what the state has. Am I speaking correctly, Mr. Roper? Right. I will close our public hearing on that. So does this constitute third reading? So I'll ask for a motion and a second that this constitutes third reading of ordinance number 589 to amend the accommodations tax ordinance for Pickens County so as to make it more uniformly apply to the accommodations within the county.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Feimster.
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Bowers. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. Well, I wasn't sure. All right. Next item is consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the scenic highway overlay. We also added
Solid waste, I guess.
Solid waste.
solid waste. So I ask for a motion and a second on those two items to add to the consent agenda. Motion by Vice Chairman Bowers.
Second.
Second by Councilman Feimster. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. That motion carries. Item number 15 is executive session. We'll enter into executive session for only two things: economic development contractual obligation, and then update on Project Jericho. So as for a motion and a second that we enter into executive session for those two items only.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Hendricks, second by Councilman Hudson. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And we'll go into executive after a brief 5-minute recess.
I don't need to even take that.
I know.
How about that? That's a first.